Hello, in this video we're going to be talking about tropisms and growth hormones. So let's not waste any of your time, let's get right to it. Now, when we're talking about tropisms, the phrase we want to think about is growing towards or away from a stimulus. And you're going to see that phrase on each one of these four slides. The second thing we want to reference to is that it isn't that, in this case, growing towards light, phototropism. It's phototropism, but you can have negative or positive phototropism. So if you think about a plant in phototropism, the leaves have positive phototropism. But guess which part has negative tropism? Yeah, the roots. They don't try to grow towards the sunlight. They're doing the opposite thing. But you can see in the picture here that you can change the direction that a plant grows simply by where its light source is. And you can even take a case like in this one where you can move the light around the plant, and you can make it spiral upwards as it's growing if you truly want to do that. That's some people might say they got better use of their time, but it's that sensitive to the direction of light, and it's got a big purpose. I mean, if you're a tree in a forest, man, you certainly want to be growing upwards and not spending any time growing to the right or to the left. But phototropism, growing towards light. Positive tropism, growing towards the light. Negative tropism would be growing away from the light. Okay, the next tropism, growing towards or away from a stimulus, is stigmotropism, and this is touch. Okay, it's plants that touch another plant, or actually anything, fence post, whatever, fence, row, whatever it may touch. It develops tendrils or grabs on epiphytic roots. You could also think of them that way, as we just spoke about in our last video. But it's the idea of touch, generating a response. And there's even plants to where if you touch the flower, they close. There's plants that if you touch the flower, the seeds kind of burst out. In other words, it's designed to, if the animal touches, maybe it's a sticky kind of a cocklebur kind of thing, that it jettisons itself out with the purpose of trying to stick to the fur so it can move around and really extend its range. But a lot of vines have this. My wife, as part of her gardens, as I've mentioned multiple times, grows things like pumpkins and things like that, and they really grab onto. She's got a fence panel that they can grab onto and climb up and around, and she's had some things out there. I think it's I don't know about tomatoes, but anyway, I don't know. But they've gone up and over the top and then back down, and you can get them go around the sides and wrap around and all that kind of stuff. So, but stigmotropism, touch. Okay, our next one is a super obvious one as well. Growing towards or away from gravity, gravitropism. And again, as I mentioned earlier, this is one that the positive or negative aspect is pretty easy to see. Roots have a positive gravitropism, but leaves do not. Roots have a negative phototropism, but leaves have a positive phototropism. It's the idea of growing towards or away from gravity. roots sense gravity. And again, we talked about the Oxens. If it, and you're going to see those here in a couple of slides. But the Oxens, these are a pigment that's in the plants, and whatever their associated tropism is, whether it's water, sunlight, gravity, they'll simply get on the opposite side of the stimulus, and like they're pushing the plant part in that direction. Okay, and our final tropism, hydrotropism, hydro, water. The blue portion of the diagram over there is supposed to represent water. You got this plant in the soil, and it senses water, so it starts to make its direction towards that. So hydrotropism, growing towards or away from water. And this is the slide that I mentioned a couple of times. The little reddish, purplish dots inside the green, that's the Oxens. But they're simply a hormone that is a part of the cell elongation process within a plant in response to a tropism. We talked about the tropism and gave you the name of the action that is happening, but it's the Oxens that help make it happen. And you can see here, we've obviously got a phototropism process in play here, but in the first picture you can see the Oxens are kind of spread out. The sunlight is straight overhead, but if you've got a situation where it's to the right or left of where the plant is, then you can see the Oxens moving over to the opposite side, and then over time pushing the plant in that particular direction. The Oxens. Now when it comes to growth hormones, there's a few here to mention. There's a lot more, but there's a few to mention of kind of some of the main hormones in action. We talked in the reproductive parts about the stigma and anther and the fertilization and the developing seed. The hormone associated with seed development is hibiscus acid. When this acid is there's a lot of it early on, and when it decreases, that promotes cell development. In other words, the seed now knows that, okay, I'm fully developed, and now it's time to start germinating and getting going here. We've talked about primary and secondary growth. We've talked about those early on in the meristem tissues. The hormone associated with growth in those situations is cytokinin. It's the hormone that promotes growth in the shoots and stems, leaves, that type of stuff. Now when it comes to fruits, at my house, every time I go I'm sent to the store, there's always bananas on the list. My wife loves bananas. It's part of her diabetic process for getting those natural sugars. Loves bananas. But it's always on the list, and always the same caveat: green as can be, please. And I don't even think we say please sometimes. But it's the idea of the ripening here at home, and ethylene is the hormone associated with ripening of plants. Where you can really see this is if you take like an apple that's overripe or starting to rot. You can take that. You've heard the term one bad apple spoils the bunch. What that's a reference to is when in the early days of fruit production, when it's just all farmers and people and whatever, if you found a rotting fruit, what type it was, you needed to remove that, because that hormone would cause the rest of them to ripen too fast, and so you got that out of there. But the hormone associated with the ripening of fruit, ethylene, as you can see there. Now when we talk roots, we talked about cell elongation, cell maturation, those kind of stuff. The hormone associated with those types of processes is garbolic acid. Stimulates cell division, so it's also a part of growth, as we saw there in cytokinin, but this is more associated with the overall length of the plant, whereas cytokinin was felt more with the leaves and the individual parts. So that's the distinction between the two. Alright, that's our video over tropisms and growth hormones. This also brings our chapter 30 video lecture series to a close. When we come back to there next time, we're going to be talking about animal structure and function. We'll see you then.